We want to welcome you back to All Things Real Estate. Once again, your hosts, Gary Kelly and Brad Avergon.
Welcome back to All Things Real Estate. I'm Gary Kelly with Brad Avergon, and we're here talking about lead paint. My colleague Sue says, just take a chip of paint and taste it. If it's sweet, it's lead paint. That's not how you test lead paint. And I think that she's clearly joking. But at the same time, lead paint is not something to laugh about. And if you have a house that has lead paint, what do you do with it, Brad?
Well, there are services that you can get that can come in and remove it. And when I say services, we're not talking like, a guy that you find around the corner with a pickup truck. This is a specialty type thing. Lead paint is toxic. And you don't want to just throw it in your local garbage can. There's specialty people that can come out. You can go to your local town and such, and they will either remove it, or they will do what's called encapsulate it, which I find interesting too. They will wrap it in such a fashion that it cannot be approached. But lead paint removal is a specialty and a science in and of itself.
But you can also run afoul of the paint stuff on a house with an FHA loan if the paint is just simply peeling. It doesn't have to be lead paint.
That's correct. You're right. I think the thinking behind it is, in general, you don't know, right? If paint is peeling, you don't know whether it's lead or otherwise. But the idea is to make the house safe. So they don't want even regular paint. You don't want a toddler eating paint. It's not one of the 4 food groups. So you really want to make sure that's done. So they do require that it can be a property that may have and peeling paint. And a lot of properties have peeling paint, maybe on a window trim or on a back door, whatever the case may be.
I had a property that was vinyl sided, but there was an entryway that had a ceiling, and the ceiling was peeling, and that had to be addressed.
Yeah, it's not uncommon, and it's not a big deal. Yeah, some sellers can do it themselves if they want prior to, or during, if they find out that it's got lead to be done, or they can hire someone for usually not a lot of money to come if it's one area to scrape it and paint it, and then the appraiser comes back and they re-inspect it and they say this is good to go. So it's very common.
That particular house with the foyer and the peeling paint. We had a handyman, the handyman, go in. He gave it a light scraping. We're not going nuts here. And then he painted it or put shellac on it. That was enough to prevent it from continuing. And, it didn't look beautiful, but it got past the FHA requirement. And that was the key.
Exactly.
So when you have an FHA loan, you don't pay PMI. You pay a MIP.
You pay MIP. MIP is an acronym for Mortgage Insurance Premium, as opposed to PMI, which is Private Mortgage Insurance, right?
I worked a long time in computer, and MIPs were millions of instructions process. So this is a different kind of MIP to me.
It is. So what happens when you get an FHA loan? And I would say, that typically the reason that people want to get an FHA loan is they want to put a minimal down payment down. And one of the advantages, we should definitely touch on these, the advantages with an FHA is, you can put down 3.5%, can all be gift, and you can put 3.5% down on 1 to 4 unit property. So it's a great way for first-time home buyers to buy a property, maybe their first home, maybe it's a 3-family, 2-family, or a 4-family with 3.5% down, live in it for a year or 2 or 3 or 4, and then maybe go buy a single-family home down the road, but keep that property as a rental property because you can get some nice rental income. It's a wonderful program to be able to use that. The other thing that FHA offers an advantage is it offers a little bit higher what's called DTI, or debt to income ratios. And basically what that means is it's a little bit more relaxed as far as being able to qualify based on your mortgage payment compared to what you make. And so that's a real positive. But at the same time, as you brought up, the mortgage insurance premium. So FHA requires that you put down initially, this is 1.75%. Now that sounds scary up front, but the good news is is that you can finance that into your loan amount. And we do that on a regular basis. So let's say you're putting that 3.5% down and you're taking the rest of the mortgage. We're going to take that extra 1.75% of the mortgage and we're going to add it on top of whatever regular mortgage you would be. That being said, you do have to pay, in addition to that, a monthly premium to FHA, which is, if you're putting 3.5% down, it's a little more than 0.5% per year. So we divide that up and we demonstrate it similar. We show clients. So it's similar to what PMI would feel like.
I know your company does FHA loans all day, every day. And I know we did a marketing thing with St. Mary's recently, St. Mary's Credit Union, and they don't do them. I was surprised by that. And I'm not asking you to get into the heads of the marketing people at St. Mary's, but I was surprised by that.
It's a specialty, Gary. It really is. We are a national company, and across the United States, we have a lot of situations where FHAs come in really, really handy. But you got to be good at it. It's just like anything. If you do one or two, a year, it's tricky. So you got to be good at it. You have to be aware of the overlays, because again, if you do not achieve that, if you approve a loan and say you don't have the peeling pay taken care of and you don't have this taken care of, FHA won't insure that loan. They won't back that loan. And that becomes a problem. So you really have to be good at these things and make sure that everything lines up the way it's supposed to. And so a lot of places don't do that. They'll just do regular.
Yeah, I personally look at FHA, USDA, which is out there, and you can buy a property that's considered rural by the USDA standards. There are properties not very far north of Westboro, etc., that have USDA qualifications. And then VA loans. I look at them all kind of similarly. They're a specialty loan, and you need to have someone, loan officer, that knows what they're doing, to take you by the hand and walk you through some of those. And I'm not trying to put FUD in the air, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. I'm trying to say, listen, it's not an everyday thing to do this, and you really do have to work with someone that knows what they're doing.
I would agree with that.
You know anyone, Brad?
I would absolutely agree with what you're saying. I equate to having USD. I do FHA, USD. I do reverse mortgages, which is also a type of loan geared to people 62 and older. That is an FHA. So it's like having a tool in your toolbox, like a Sawzall. If you're going to use a Sawzall, hopefully the person, you better have some experience using it. You need to know how to do it. Otherwise, you can do a lot of damage. So,
Brad, I know that you've used a Sawzall to trim a branch on a tree. I know it.
I can neither confirm or deny that, Gary. But in all seriousness, no, you really do want to go with a loan officer that has some familiarity with an FHA loan or any of the other types of loans that you talk about, the USDA or reverse, as I mentioned. FHA also has a special type of loan called a 203K loan, which enables you to do, it's like a rehab loan. So let's say you have a property that doesn't quite meet FHA standards, and it requires more money than the borrower has available, or that the seller can do to refix it, or the 203K allows you to do some rehab, some repairs to that property. It's a little more complex and more than we have the ability to go into today. But again, it's a tool, and all of these are wonderful tools for the right situation.
One of my things with the FHA 203K, blah, 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 EIEIO, is at that point you need to have people that know how to do the paperwork. You need to have a contractor. It's not Joey Bag of Donuts. It's a real live contractor who can do these schedules, because that will go into the funding, and then it also goes into the disbursement schedule.
Correct. They have to be licensed. They have to be insured. They have to be, and these are all things. Again, if you look at that, it's following a theme, and the theme is we are protecting the buyer and their family, right? Whether they have small children, and we do, FHA is saying you can't have peeling paint, or it's a young couple buying their first home and they want to do some renovations to the property. Well, maybe they haven't done renovations before. They just watched an HGTV episode where in 30 minutes, miraculously, the house was fine. These things can turn into nightmares. So they require you get someone that's licensed, you get someone that has some experience, you get someone that's insured. So though somebody isn't going to take your house down and do damage and happen. So FHA is looking out for those things. The other thing is when we're even on a regular FHA, we're looking at, if there's asbestos, sometimes you'll see asbestos. Those things have to be wrapped and contained. Why? Because asbestos dust is dangerous. If there's exposed electrical or an old type of wiring called knob and tube wiring, which was an older form of wiring that was used, but had open areas that could potentially be dangerous, those things have to be taken care of. They have to be addressed and removed. So FHA is kind of looking out for the consumer in that regard.
So this comes off the article that I wrote, okay? And the article's title was, "Are FHA loans a good thing?" How would you answer that?
I would say FHA loans are a good thing for the right situation. They're a wonderful tool. If you're trying to buy a house, and you may be able to comment on this, and the house is just coming on for the weekend and it's in good shape, it's good. If you come in with an FHA offer and somebody else is coming in with a cash and another person's coming in with a conventional mortgage, it's going to be hard to get that home. And that can lead to some frustration and disappointment. When I'm dealing with folks with FHA loans, I often encourage them, don't necessarily look at the house that just came on the market this weekend. Look at the house that's been on the market for a couple of weeks, 2 to 4 weeks, because that seller is more motivated to sell that home. They didn't get that off the market right away, and they may be willing to work with you, as was the case that we had the seller previously, on the deal that you just referred to previously.
Yeah, the case that Brad and I worked on together, we had a friend of the family, friend of Brad's family, delightful woman, works in a hospital, no dummy at all, and she wanted a house, and she looked at a lot of houses, and it was we found the right one, and she struck on it. We're also working with some others that are looking at homes, and it's not an easy thing, and you got to go to. I believe that you don't want to waste time, but at the same time, you got to go stand in the batter's box once in a while and take a swing, because if you don't take the swing, you'll never be able to hit the ball, and if you miss it, then you miss it. You go on to the next one.
Gary, I've used the FHA program a number of times. I had a client that lived in Natick. They had a child with special needs. They had to stay in that town, and they were getting blown out deal after deal. They would just get outbid. And I said, listen, if I could help you, would you be willing to work with me and get you a home? And they said, yes. I came up, I pre-approved them for an FHA loan. I not only pre-approved them for an FHA, I pre-approved them for a 203K. I then got the contractor that was going to be able to work with them. And then I went and I talked to their realtor and I explained, show me a dog with fleas, as I like to say. Show me that house that's not selling because it needs work, but that we can get them into. And we worked around that. We worked together, and we were able to get them. They were able to stay in the town of their choice. Their child was able to go to the school system there, and it worked out great. It's a great tool for somebody, for first-time homebuyers that are just trying to get in and are reaching that frustration level.
It's nice when you say to someone, when you get the opportunity to make the call that says you got the house. No one cares what kind of financing. No one cares how many houses they looked at. They got the house, and whether they're male or female, they all squeal. They're so excited.
It's great. And, a lot of especially first-time home buyers, Gary, they think they can't get a home. Our client, case in point, thought she had to get a condo, said, I'm not going to be able to buy a single family house. I said, let's give it a try. Let's see if we can do this. We just have to target the right way. And we were able to do it.
Well, you worked hard on that one. And I thank you for that. Not that we didn't, but I just want to acknowledge that not all situations are created equally.
Thank you, Gary.
So, Brad, if someone wants to reach you and repeat that kind of experience, how would they do that?
The best way to reach me, Gary, is via my cell phone, which is 978-375-5531, or they can reach me at brad@bradavergon.com. And Gary, how do they reach you?
Brad, for a second, I thought you were going to say, well, I'm in aisle 4 in the Home Depot every weekend trying to get some clients here. I can be reached at Gary at movewithgary.com and 508-733-6005. Also, we have the website, Move with Gary or Move with GK, either one.com. Well, Brad, thank you for participating in this little insanity. I hope all of our viewers, listeners, etc. Have enjoyed it, and I look forward to chatting with you again.
Likewise, Gary. Be well.
Thank you for watching All Things Real Estate. If you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to Brad or Gary.